About a month or so ago, I tested CSGO on its minimum PC hardware requirements to see how well it ran all these years on. Spoilers, it wasn't actually as bad as many people would have expected. But now, Valve have done the unthinkable and replaced the iconic Dust2 with Dust2. So I'm here to see how well the new one runs and if those minimum specs are still enough. The visual standard of the map has increased a large amount, so it's expected that it'll be harder for PCs to run. The question, of course, is how much. As with last time, I'm using the Core 2 Duo E6600 and Nvidia's 9600 GT. This is complemented by 4GB of RAM after commenters concluded that the original 2GB requirement was probably for Windows XP. CSGO, meanwhile, is running on lowest settings at 1024x768 pixels, and, I'll make this clear, the game is being hosted on my other PC to simulate being in a proper match. I then play 2 T-side rounds for each of the 4 main areas of the map, that's B, mid, short and long A, before repeating the same thing on the newer version. So what was it like? Well, while it was clear that the graphics card was trying harder than before, our system was still limited by the old dual-core processor overall. This meant that performance impact was actually relatively minor moving to the much newer map. Reddit user Gotius also noticed that many minor details on the map actually disappear entirely on low settings, which is a nice move by Valve to accommodate low-end PCs, even if it does make lining up some nades harder. Here is the overall chart comparing the average and 1% minimum frame rates in each area between the two maps. As you can see, average frame rates here took a hit by between 2 and 5%, while the 1% minimums were down by around 15% on the newer map. It was very nice to see the poor old Core 2 still pulling in triple figure frame rates in some areas on both versions of the map, even if the minimums were a bit lower than I'd really like them to be. Due to my improved testing methodology, I was also able to make these fancy frame rate graphs for each area. They're not incredibly useful since I wasn't necessarily in the same place at the same time between the two runs. However, they're interesting in that they allow us to compare the overall consistency of the frame rate, as well as the frequency and the severity of frame drops. So there we have it. The new Dust2 is slightly harder to run, and probably even worse if your system is graphics limited. Average frame rates were more than acceptable in most cases, as long as you keep in mind that this is the absolute minimum required to play according to Valve. And while minimums were often on the wrong side of 60, they didn't get in the way of gameplay even when a lot of shooting was going on. So thanks for watching, and consider subscribing if you want more stuff like this.